Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wettinger, the Department of Labor Office of Inspector General reported in March of 2022 that fraud within the unemployment insurance program has resulted in $163 billion in taxpayer losses. When you put this together with the roughly $84 billion in fraudulent idle loans and $4.6 billion in the PPP loans, which actually received significant underwriting and oversight from the financial institutions throughout the nation. This whole thing looks like it's going to cost about $250 billion due to poor program just oversight. I also sit on the House Small Business Committee, which has oversight right now on PPP and EIDL. And what the SBA Inspector General testified to before the committee in January, he said that the OIG, in partnership with the U.S. Secret Service, has recovered $4.2 billion in fraudulent loans in FY 2021. The recovery rate is obviously very weak, and I think until we found out that DOL kind of was still working on this, but it only recovered this $4 billion. Can you tell us, what are the things do you see that could be done or that Congress should be doing when it comes to, other than completely just avoiding SBA direct loans in the future, what other things could we do to lower this fraudulent rate that we have experienced under COVID?
Well, Congressman, thanks for the question. It's much of what you are hearing about and what you read about in terms of fraud in all these programs comes from two combined factors. The pandemic, which was an extraordinary event that disrupted all sorts of stuff, but especially within the context of the UI system, the pandemic alone drove state unemployment benefit payments to levels that states probably couldn't have handled, right? The state systems were breaking down, just trying to pay state benefits in the weeks after the pandemic struck. So from early March 2020, they went from roughly 2 million around the country to something like 18, 19 million, just the state side of this system within a couple of months. Then along comes Congress, as I said in my opening statement, with the best of intentions, and airdrops several new programs into the mix and says, hey states, in addition to everything else you're doing, run these programs providing millions of new individuals that are not known to you, like in the UI side of the House, benefits, and make sure that you do it right and make sure that it's paid promptly and all that. So some of the answer, especially going forward, should be, if Congress wants to run these sorts of programs, don't airdrop them on states and expect things to work out, especially in the middle of a pandemic. Pandemic was much worse than a typical recession, but that only made things all the worse. And that you complicate that with the underlying administrative financing issues that go back, quite frankly, decades in this system, and that just makes it all worse. You all are having this hearing after the fact asking, what could we do that would have made things different? And that's sort of a dynamic involving the $2 billion that the Biden administration included in the American Rescue Plan in terms of one-time funds. To fix these things requires enduring, long-term attention to make sure that states can do the things you want them to do and pay eligible recipients in a timely fashion and keep the people who shouldn't be collecting benefits away from benefits.
Yeah, and I just add, what we heard from law enforcement too was these are some of the most difficult cases to actually track, and they certainly don't have the resources to put forward because quite honestly, a lot of these applications were online application, little bit of follow-up, and in some instances, checks showed up out of the blue in mailboxes without having any contact with the person that originally applied for the dollars related, especially in the PPP program. So I appreciate your comments. I think, yeah, it's a message for every member of Congress that the closer and the quicker you kind of create a program like this, when there is no oversight kind of at the local level, whether it be state level or working with associations within those states, you're going to continue to experience this level of fraud.
Yeah, and that's also within the bounds of a system where the states really don't have much incentive to guard the door in terms of benefits going out, and certainly no incentive to try to help the feds by recovering benefits on the back end.
Very good. Thank you. I yield back, Mr. Chair.